You're standing on the pier in Cartagena, Spain, on a warm May afternoon, and you're watching a grown man take a selfie. Behind him, 169,000 tons of cruise ship is pulling away from the dock. His cruise ship. He's 40 minutes past the all-aboard time. The ropes are off, and the Odyssey of the Seas is leaving with his luggage, his passport, and about 5,500 other people, some of whom are filming him from their balconies. The captain came on the speakers later that day and told everyone on board they'd left Cartagena with 4 fewer people than they arrived with. 4. In one port, on one afternoon. And here's the thing. Almost nobody watching from those balconies understood. That man didn't make one big mistake. He made a small one. The kind of small mistake the cruise industry quietly counts on you not knowing about, because the version of cruising they sell you is a floating resort where nothing can go wrong, and the version in the fine print is a moving city with a schedule, a legal department, and a flag from a country you've probably never visited. I've spent a lot of time around ports and around the people who work them, and I'll tell you straight. Cruises are, statistically, a remarkably safe way to travel. Safer than the drive to the terminal. But the handful of things that do go badly wrong at sea almost all start the same way, with a passenger doing something that felt completely harmless at the time. So today, I'm walking you through the mistakes that actually get people hurt, stranded, sick, or bankrupted on cruises, in rough order from expensive to catastrophic. And stay for the last stretch, because the reason nobody warns you about most of this has less to do with safety and a lot more to do with money. Let me set the table first, because one idea explains almost everything on this list. A cruise ship is not a hotel. A hotel sits in one legal system with one police force down the street and one hospital 10 minutes away. A cruise ship is a city of 6,000 people that changes countries every day, is usually registered in a third country, and spends its nights in international waters, where the nearest help is hours away by helicopter, if a helicopter can even reach you. Every mistake we're about to cover is really the same mistake wearing different clothes, treating the ship like a hotel, when it's actually a boarder you carry with you. Keep that in your head, and the rest of this is common sense. Mistake number 1, assuming the ship will wait for you. It will not. This is the cheapest lesson on the list, and people still pay thousands for it every single week. All aboard time is usually 30 to 60 minutes before departure. It's printed on the paper they hand you at the gangway, and it is not a suggestion. Ships pay for berth slots the way airlines pay for gates. Harbor pilots are booked, tide windows close, and a captain who waits for you in one port is late in the next 3. If you're on an excursion the cruise line sold you, they'll generally hold the ship or get you to the next port at their expense. If you booked your own tour, or you lost track of time over a second bucket of beers, you're what crews call a pier runner, and the ship's only obligation is to leave your passport and medications with the port agent. From there, you're paying your own way to the next port, $200 to $2,000 or more depending on which country it's in, plus immigration headaches if you cross a border to catch up. And the trap that catches smart people is ship time. The ship often stays on its own clock while the port sits in a different time zone. Your phone connects to a local tower, helpfully updates itself, and suddenly you're an hour late while feeling perfectly punctual. Set a watch to ship time on day 1. Not your phone, a watch. And accept, right now, before it's your afternoon in question, that the ship really will go. People simply refuse to believe it until they're watching it happen. A few years back, a 65-year-old woman missed her ship in Funchal on Madeira and was so sure it would take her back that she jumped into the Atlantic and tried to swim after it. A local fisherman pulled her out. Just last year, 8 passengers got stranded together on São Tomé, a small island nation off the coast of Central Africa, which is a genuinely difficult place to arrange a last-minute flight out of. The ship doesn't hate you. The ship has a harbor pilot booked in the next country. Be back at the gangway an hour early, treat that last hour in port as already spent, and you will never once regret it. Mistake number 2. Treating the railing like furniture. The numbers on going overboard are actually reassuring, and I want to be honest about that because a lot of channels aren't. Industry data from 2009 to 2019 counted 212 overboard incidents, about 19 a year, out of tens of millions of passengers annually. In 2024, it was 19 people. That's roughly 1 incident per 1.4 million voyages. Modern ships have railings around chest height, and they're engineered so that a sober adult standing on the deck essentially cannot fall over one by accident. Which is exactly the point. Because when you look at how these incidents actually happen, the pattern is brutal in its consistency. Someone climbed, sat on a railing for a photo, balanced on a balcony chair, tried to hop between balconies after the bars closed, and once you're in the water, the sea does not grade on effort. Ships cruise around 23 miles an hour and take miles to turn around. The standard rescue maneuver, the Williamson turn, is a beautiful piece of seamanship that brings the ship back down its own wake, and it still takes long enough that by the time the searchlights are on the water, the person is a head-sized dot in an ocean that moves. Newer ships carry overboard detection systems, cameras, and sensors watching the hull, but plenty of the fleet still relies on somebody seeing it happen, and most incidents happen at night. Roughly 60% of people who go into cold open water die within minutes from cold shock, before hypothermia even gets a vote. Of the tracked incidents since 2017, the survival rate runs in the single digits. So the rule is almost insultingly simple. Your feet stay on the deck. Nothing goes on the railing that you'd miss, including you. Every one of those deaths was preventable by standing somewhere else, and that is the most fixable statistic in this entire video. Mistake number 3, drinking like the package dares you to. The unlimited drink package is a masterpiece of psychology. You've prepaid, so every round after the 6th feels free. The bars are open past midnight, the pool deck is 90 degrees, and there's no drive home. But alcohol is the quiet thread running through the ugliest cruise stories there are. It shows up in overboard cases, in pool incidents, in the fights that end vacations in a shipboard cell, and in the assault reports we'll get to in a minute. In December 2025, a family filed a lawsuit against a major cruise line claiming a passenger was served more than 30 drinks in a single day before he died on board after being restrained by crew. That case is still working through the courts, so I'm not going to tell you who was at fault, because nobody knows yet. What I can tell you is what the case reveals about the setup. Bars with sales incentives, a package that removes every natural brake on consumption, and a medical facility, not a hospital, several hundred miles from shore. Drink on your cruise, genuinely, enjoy it, but drink like you're in a foreign city where you don't speak the language, and the nearest emergency room is a helicopter ride away, because that is precisely where you are. Mistake number 4. Trusting the buffet more than your own hands. In 2025, the CDC logged 21 gastrointestinal outbreaks on cruise ships, the most ever recorded since they started publishing this data in 1994. The previous record was 18, set the year before. Almost all of it is norovirus, and to be fair to the cruise lines, a ship doesn't brew norovirus out of nothing. It walks up the gangway inside a passenger or comes aboard in contaminated food from a port. But once it's aboard, a cruise ship is the finest norovirus incubator humans have ever engineered. Thousands of people, shared handrails, shared serving spoons, and a new batch of hosts every 7 days. When Cunard's Queen Mary II got hit over the holidays a year back, more than 300 passengers went down on a single crossing, about 1 in 8 people on board. The CDC only even declares an outbreak when 3% of a ship is sick, so the ones that make the news are the tip of it. And 2025 didn't sneak up on anyone. 16 of those 21 outbreaks landed in the first 4 months of the year, which tells you the record was locked in by spring. Here's what an outbreak means for you personally, by the way, because the brochure certainly won't spell it out. If you report symptoms, you're confined to your cabin, usually for at least 48 hours, watching the islands go by through a window while your prepaid excursions sail on without you. Nobody refunds the sunshine. Your defense is stupidly old-fashioned. Soap and water, 20 seconds before every meal. Not just the sanitizer gel by the buffet door, because norovirus laughs at alcohol gel. It's one of the few bugs the sanitizer doesn't reliably kill. Use the tongs, not your fingers. And if half the ship starts vomiting, skip the buffet entirely and order the plated food. It's the same kitchen, but 100 fewer strangers have breathed on it. Mistake number 5. Assuming the ship's excursion desk vetted anything. This is the one that genuinely bothers me, because it trades on your trust. When an excursion is sold on the ship, printed in the ship's brochure, and boarded from the ship's gangway, every signal tells you the cruise line stands behind it. Then something goes wrong, and you discover the phrase independent contractor. In November 2025, a catamaran carrying dozens of cruise passengers on a shore excursion went down in Samana Bay in the Dominican Republic. Around 50 people had to be pulled from the water. Everyone survived that one, thankfully. The month before, in Australia, an 80-year-old woman named Suzanne Reese joined an organized hike from her ship to a lookout on Lizard Island. She felt unwell on a hot climb, was sent back down the trail alone, and the ship left the island without her, apparently without a head count. Her body was found the next day. Her daughter called it a failure of care and common sense. The Maritime Authority is investigating, and the company canceled the rest of the voyage. I'm not here to litigate either case. I'm here to tell you what they teach. Booking through the ship buys you scheduling protection, not a safety inspection. So do the checking yourself. Look the operator up by name before you sail. If it's a boat, count the life jackets when you board. If it's a hike in the heat and you're not sure, don't go. And never, ever separate from the group in a place where the group is the only thing keeping track of you. One more layer of honesty here. The ship's excursions typically cost 30 to 50% more than booking the identical tour, often with the identical operator directly on shore. What that markup actually buys you is one specific thing: the guarantee that the ship waits if your tour runs late. That's worth real money on a tight port day with a long drive. It's worth nothing on a beach 200 meters from the pier. Pay the markup when the schedule is the risk. Keep your money when it isn't. Just know which one you're buying. Mistake number 6, sailing without real travel insurance. Or worse, buying the cruise line's version and thinking you're covered. Here's the arithmetic they don't put on the glossy page. The ship's medical center bills like a private clinic in international waters, because that's what it is. A few hours of observation, A blood test and some medication has produced bills of $2,500 before the ship even reached port. Your health insurance from home very likely covers none of it, and Medicare covers essentially nothing outside the United States. Now scale up. If you need to come off the ship in a hurry, a medical evacuation runs anywhere from $25,000 to $150,000 depending on where you are. A fixed-wing air ambulance off the Alaska coast lands in the $65,000 to $85,000 range before the hospital in Anchorage says hello. And the protection plan sold at checkout by some cruise lines caps medical coverage around $20,000 and evacuation around $50,000. That's not coverage, that's a down payment. A proper third-party policy with $100,000 in medical and at least $250,000 in evacuation coverage typically costs 5 to 10% of your trip price. On a $3,000 cruise, that's a couple $100 standing between you and the single largest bill of your life. It is the least glamorous purchase in travel, and it's the one I'd make before I bought so much as a drink package. 2 details while you're at it, because they're where people get burned. First, if anyone in your party has a pre-existing condition, many good policies will only waive that exclusion if you buy within 2 or 3 weeks of your first trip deposit. So this is a decision for booking day, not sailing day. Second, read whether the policy covers a missed port departure and independent excursions, because plenty of cheap ones quietly don't. And those are precisely the 2 ways a cruise goes sideways. Mistake number 7. Forgetting that a ship full of strangers is still a city full of strangers. Let's do this one with the numbers in plain view, because both halves of the truth matter. In 2025, 181 crimes on cruise ships were reported to the FBI, the highest annual figure since this reporting began, and about 2/3 of them, 121, were sexual in nature. That is the most reported category of crime at sea, year after year. Now the other half, per 100,000 people, the violent crime rate on ships is a small fraction of the rate on land. You are safer walking a cruise deck at midnight than most city streets. But here's why the mistake still matters. On land, when something happens, there's a police force, a detective, an evidence protocol. At sea, the first responder is the ship's own security team, employed by the company whose brand is on the line. And the investigating authority might be a country neither you nor the accused has ever set foot in. We'll come back to why that is. For now, the practical version, the ship's atmosphere is engineered to make you drop your guard. And most of what gets reported involves alcohol, late hours, and cabins. So watch your drink like you would in any bar on Earth. Keep your cabin door locked, including the balcony divider. Don't let the vacation glow talk you or your kids into treating a corridor at 2 a.m. like your own hallway. It isn't. It's a street in a city where the police are 3 days away. And one more thing that matters more than people realize. If something does happen to you or someone you're with, and you're an American citizen, you have the right to report it directly to the FBI yourself, from the ship, without waiting for the company's process. Write down times, names, and cabin numbers while they're fresh. On land, it's a detective's job. At sea, for the first few days, it's yours. Mistake number 8, letting the kids treat the pool deck like a backyard. This one is short and it's uncomfortable. Most people assume cruise pools have lifeguards the way public pools at home do. For years, most didn't, and it took drownings and near drownings for several of the big lines to start posting them in the last decade. Even now, coverage varies by line, by ship, and by hour, and the smaller pools and hot tubs are often unwatched entirely. Add in the fact that pool areas are loud, crowded, and full of adults holding drinks from mistake number 3, and you have the setting for the quietest kind of tragedy there is, because drowning doesn't look like the movies. It's silent, and it takes seconds. Slips and falls are the same story in slower motion. Nearly half of all onboard injuries are just people going down hard on wet decks and stairs, usually in flip-flops, occasionally holding a tray. The fix costs nothing. Eyes on your kids in the water, your own eyes, not the crowd's. Shoes with actual grip. Hand on the rail on stairs, and take it from someone who's watched a lot of people learn this the hard way, in a swell you can barely feel. One hand for you, one for the ship. The old sailors have been saying that one for 200 years. And they said it because the deck moves, even when your eyes swear it doesn't. The worst falls happen on the first sea day, when everyone still has land legs, land shoes, and a land walking speed, on a surface that is very politely lying to them about being still. Mistake number 9. Stepping ashore with everything or with nothing. 2 versions of the same error. The first traveler takes it all ashore, passport, every card, the good watch, $800 cash, and becomes the single most attractive target within 3 blocks of any cruise terminal on Earth, because port pickpockets have watched 10,000 people exactly like them walk down that gangway. The second traveler takes nothing, just a key card and sunscreen, and is completely fine right up until the moment they miss the ship, and are now standing in a foreign country with no ID, no money, no phone charger, and no medication, which is precisely the situation an elderly passenger found himself in more than once last year. The right answer is a small day bag with a photocopy of your passport, 1 card, modest cash, any medication you can't skip a dose of, and the piece of paper almost nobody takes. The daily program page with the port agent's name and phone number on it. That agent is the ship's human left behind on the dock, and if anything goes wrong ashore, they are the difference between a bad afternoon and a lost week. Costs you nothing to fold that page into your pocket. It's the cheapest insurance in this entire video. And mistake number 10, the one underneath all the others, sleepwalking through the muster drill. I know. It's 20 minutes of standing in a crowd while the crew demonstrates a life jacket you're confident you'll never wear, and half the ship treats it as the price of admission to the sail-away party. But everything we know about maritime disasters says the same thing. Outcomes are decided in the first minutes by the people who already knew where to go. When the Costa Concordia went over on its side in 2012 and 32 people died, the confusion of an evacuation that nobody was ready for was written into every account of that night. Your assembly station matters because at night, in a listing corridor with the lights out, somewhere on deck 7, is not information. So do the drill for real. Walk the route from your actual cabin once. Count the stairwells. Know that elevators are out of the equation the moment anything happens. It's a 5-minute investment in the one scenario where no amount of money, insurance, or common sense can be bought after the fact. You'll almost certainly never need it. The people who did almost certainly thought the same. Now here's the part that actually matters, because you might be wondering why you've never heard most of this laid out plainly in one place by anyone selling you a cruise. It's not a conspiracy. It's cheaper than a conspiracy. It's just incentives lined up in a row. Start with the flag on the back of the ship. Nearly every ocean cruise ship serving American and European passengers is registered in Panama, the Bahamas, or Malta, countries chosen for their taxes, their labor rules, and their gentle regulatory touch. That flag isn't decoration. It decides whose laws apply in international waters, whose investigators show up when something happens, and how hard anyone looks afterward. Then there's the excursion structure, where the ship keeps a healthy cut of every tour it sells, while the phrase independent contractor keeps the liability ashore with a small operator you'll never successfully sue. Then, the onboard economy, where the drink package, the casino, and the spa work best when you're relaxed, spending, and not thinking about clocks, weather, or fine print. None of the people in this system are villains. The crew members I've met work brutal contracts and genuinely care whether you get home safe. The port agents, the tender drivers, the local guides, they're the ones who fish the pier runners out of trouble. The system, though, is built to sell you the brochure ship, the one where the railing is a photo prop and the buffet is bottomless and the schedule bends for you, because there is no money in walking you through the fine print ship. There's a great deal of money in making sure you never think about it until you need it. And that, honestly, is the deeper thing I'd want you to take from all this, beyond any single tip. There are two versions of every trip you'll ever take, the version in the marketing and the version on the ground. And the entire skill of traveling well is learning to see the second one without losing your affection for the first. A cruise ship seen clearly is more impressive, not less. It's a city that makes its own water and power, crossing open ocean on a schedule, crewed by people from 40 countries, and it works almost flawlessly almost all of the time. You don't have to be afraid of it. You just have to stop mistaking it for a hotel with a view. The traveler who understands what they're actually standing on, what that flag means, where the exits are, what the schedule forgives and what it doesn't, gets everything the brochure promised and none of the surprises. That's not paranoia. That's just knowing where you are, which is the oldest travel skill there is. So here's what I want you to take away, in the order it'll save you. Before you sail, buy real third-party insurance with serious evacuation coverage and read what the cruise line's own plan actually caps out at, because it will surprise you. Day 1. Do the muster drill honestly. Walk your escape route once. Set a cheap watch to ship time and never touch it again. In port, photocopy of the passport, one card, the port agent's phone number, and back at the gangway an hour before, all aboard, not at all aboard. On excursions, check the operator yourself, count the life jackets, stay with the group, and let being through the ship buy you convenience while your own eyes buy you safety. On board, wash your hands like it's 2020. Keep your feet off the railing and your kids inside arm's length of the water, and drink like the nearest hospital is a $150,000 flight away, because it is. Do those things, and here's the trip you actually get. The same ship everyone else is on. The same sunsets and the same absurd midnight pizza. Except you're the one relaxed in a way the brochure can't sell, because your version of relaxed is built on knowing exactly how the machine works. You'll watch the pier runners from your balcony instead of being one. And when the ship pulls out on time with everyone you love on board, that ordinary moment is the whole payoff. Tell me in the comments below, what's the closest call you've ever had on a cruise, or the thing you saw in a port that made you rethink how you travel? I especially want to hear from the crew members and the frequent cruisers, the people who've watched all of this play out from the inside, because those comments teach me things no report ever does, and I genuinely read every single one of them. If this kind of straight talk about how travel actually works is what you're after, subscribe, because next time we're getting into the ports themselves. The famous cruise stops that locals quietly avoid, including one legendary Caribbean harbor where almost everything the passengers see was built specifically so they'd never walk the 4 blocks to the real town, and the 4 blocks are the best part. You'll want to see which one. Until then, keep your feet on the deck, your watch on ship time, and your eyes on the version of the place they're not selling.